For people who want to know what is the Keith Andrew Network, the whole point of my talk show is to show you that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities to never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be, so prove them. Stand out to something. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the one and only Keith Andrew Network. Available on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and all social medias. Today, it is episode 961. That's right, 961. We have a professional, great actor on the show, on the hit shows Rescue Me, Prison Break, Bailout, and Walker, Texas Ranger. I won't say who it is, but you will see when we come back from the commercial break. Before we do, make sure to like, subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook, definitely leave a comment so me and my guests can interact with it. On YouTube, definitely like and subscribe so you can stay up to date of all the brand new content available only from the Keith Andrew Network. Stay tuned from after the break.
Hi, my name is Dennis O'Neil. I am being interviewed by Keith Andrew, who I found to be an absolute joy of a person to talk to work with, and I recommend this show to everyone. I hope you see the show that I'm doing with him. He's terrific. He just knows how to bring things out of you, and you get to talking, and the problem could be that you keep talking, but he has a way of drawing you back in, so it's a good show. Again, my name is Dennis O'Neil.
So the first question I want to ask you is tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I started out in life in the Gowanus Projects in Brooklyn. I was born and raised in the Gowanus Projects. I went to PS32. I went to PS32 elementary school, and I was politely asked to leave, and the principal told my parents, send him to St. Agnes Catholic School. The nuns will make sure he's disciplined. And the nuns made sure I was disciplined. And that was during the times that they were allowed to hit you and whack you on the knuckles with a where is it? With a ruler, except those were wooden rulers. And I was a bad kid. I was a really bad kid. I had a lot of energy. I don't know if I was ADHD or whatever they call it. But whatever it was, I was it. Then I grew up. At a very young age, smoking cigarettes and going to Carroll Park, drinking beer. We would have the older guys from the gangs buy us 6 packs of beer. We'd do that, and that went on for many, many years. So let me cut to the chase. My senior high school, I was a junior at the time, and my principal, this is how bad I was. My principal called me into his office and he said, O'Neil, sit down. There's 2 things I'm going to tell you. Number 1, you'll never make it in life. Number 2, you'll never make it to your senior year. Get out of here. Go back to your class. And this was in New York, so teachers, principals were a little different. So I squeaked by in my to my senior year, just squeaked by. And my first week in my senior year, I got up out of class and I walked to the assistant principal's office and I said to him, I quit. He said, you quit what? I said, I quit school. I gave him the bird. I walked out. And for 10 years, I worked in factories. I worked as short order cook, cleaning up restaurants, delivery guy. I could never really get a good paying job. 10 years later, I went back to school, came to my senses. My wife talked me into it, and got my high school diploma, got my associate's degree, my first degree, and a few years later, I got my bachelor's degree, and both in theater. So became an actor. First, I was a singer, and then I became an actor and started to audition for different TV shows, films. My first play was Cabaret, and I had one of the leads. It was the MC part, and that's what really got me hooked on acting. And after the first show, we got a standing ovation, and I said, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life." And so from then on, I worked with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci. Yeah, Joe Pesci. You got a problem with that? What am I, funny? I make you laugh? Yeah, that's Joe Pesci. Robert De Niro. You're good. You're very, listen to me. I said you're good. Yeah, that Robert De Niro. So then I worked with Sylvester Stallone, Robin Williams' stunt double, and almost all the soap operas in New York, and about 300 film, TV, stage, and TV commercial productions. And of course, now I own two production companies. One is Bailout TV, LLC. Another is Denmark Productions, LLC. And we're doing our own shows.
Well, like I said, I do have some great ideas, but just throwing it out there for you. Hypothetically, would my show be something you'd be interested in working on?
Now, well, what do you mean? Tell me what you mean.
Hey, so if like airing the show, maybe like change it, like get in the studio, producing it a different way, because there's so many great questions I want to ask you. But you mentioned that you create your own content.
Yes.
But would you hypothetically be interested in bringing someone on board in collaborating?
Oh, well, I never thought of that, but I'm always open. You know, I never shut the door to anything that's possible. I say all things are possible to them that believe. So if it's in the right plan, yeah, I'm always open. There's always something I'm willing to try.
Absolutely.
Actually, with my show Bailout, I was talking to the producer this morning. We're doing a podcast, and it's the Bailout Show. Now, the way to see my show, if you go to www.bailouttv.com, you can see all the 5-minute webisodes, and there's one half-hour show. That's an episode. And we're getting ready to put out 2 more. So we'll have 3 of those. But we're doing a podcast as if you're watching it, except you're listening to it. So I don't know if you remember the old radio theater, those old shows. So we're doing something like that, except more up to date. And of course, the audio is going to be a lot better than it was back then. Can you hear that little dun-dun? You can hear that?
Yes.
I don't know how to turn that off.
Don't worry about it.
That'll go off. I apologize.
Well, for people want to know that you are a famous actor. You came a long way. You know, you said you were a troubled kid, but look at you. You are on the top 5 greatest shows and longer, because I'm just looking at the list, so if my head's down, I apologize.
That's okay.
So the first show I want to talk to you about is you were on Walker's Texas Ranger.
Yes, twice. And they still play all around the world. They still get residual checks. And I was on those 1995 and 96. And I had 2 really good roles. And 2 of them, I had fights with Chuck Norris, which was great. I mean, how many people could say that they fought Chuck Norris and came out alive?
That's true. Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for each show because you have a lot of them. So I want to go make sure I have time to go for all of them.
Okay.
How did you go about getting cast for Chuck Norris to Walker Texas Ranger? And do you have any funny stories?
Well, I don't know if this would be funny, but it was funny to me. I auditioned for the first Walker Texas Ranger. They were doing the opening show, so it was a 2 hour special, and I auditioned for it, but I had a speaking engagement at a church in San Antonio when I got the call that I was called for it, but I couldn't do the show. And I was so disappointed because I was down in San Antonio and I couldn't cancel that. And then when I came back, I was hoping to audition again. And I think after the first or second episode, they canceled the show. They didn't like it. CBS didn't like it. They canceled it. And it's funny because this is what I wrote. I wrote down, I really felt that I was called to do that show. But I remember auditioning for it 8 times. And on the 8th time, the casting director said, Dennis, I don't know why they keep calling you in. They should know your blood type. They should know your DNA by now. You should be on this show. And she said, it just has to do with the producer. And I said, well, I understand. So 8 times I auditioned for it. And after that, I just said, okay, I'm just not going to have my hopes up anymore. But the second episode, that's when they canceled it. And this is what I wrote down. Now, I don't want to get religious here, but I'm a pretty spiritual guy. I wrote down, thank you, Lord, for my role on Walker, Texas Ranger. And I put it up on my mirror in my bathroom. Now, Walker, Texas Ranger was off the air. And the first assistant director was a friend of mine. And, he would call me every now and then, and he would say things like, man, I wish it didn't get off the air, and you'd be great on it. And I said, well, Craig, I wrote this down, and I say it every morning, and I put my hand on it. Thank you, Lord, for my role on Walker, Texas Ranger. And he started laughing. He said, Dennis, once a show is canceled, it'll never come back on the air again. I said, okay, all right. I hung up, and I went into the bathroom before I went to bed, and I said, thank you, Lord, for my role on Walker, Texas Ranger. I did this for 4 months. Guess what happened? Walker, Texas Ranger came back on the air. That's when I auditioned for it 8 times. The 9th time that was a charm. I got it. So I was on it, and I did that first one, and Chuck Norris later told me that was his favorite one. And I can't think of the name of it. You probably know the name of it, but I can't think of the name of it. But I was supposed to be on it for, I think it was 1 day, and I didn't have any lines, although it was applicable. They didn't give me any lines. So when I got there, they realized, oh, this guy's a good actor. So they gave me some lines. Then they asked me to come back the next day as the same character. The next day, the next day, the next day. So I got 2 weeks out of it and had a really good fight scene with Chuck Norris. So this might be a little funny. Somebody like Chuck Norris, you really don't mess around with. But we weren't doing the fight scene. And I went over to the stunt coordinator and I said, hey, Vic, when are we going to do the fight scene? He said, oh, you didn't hear? I said, no, hear what? He said, well, Chuck decided not to do the fight scene. I said, why? He said, well, the plane is kind of small, and usually actors complain and they're afraid of them. You know, they twitch and it just never goes right. And I said, yeah, but Chuck Norris was unbeaten champ for 5 years, and he knows what he's doing. He's not going to crack a tooth or break my nose. He said, well, some actors are afraid. I said, okay. So I walked away, and Chuck Norris was sitting down on the plane. And I looked down at him. I said, Chuck, can I talk to you for a minute? He said, yeah, what? He's looking up. I said, do you mind standing up? And he's looking at me. So he looks at me, and I got this close to him. And I said to him, I hear you cancel our fight scene. And he's looking at me and said, yeah, there's not enough room on the plane. And I said, Chuck, you think I'm going to go back to Brooklyn and tell my friends I didn't get beat up by the best of them? And I just looked at him, and he's looking at me, and he cracked up laughing. And, Dennis, I didn't know what you were going to do, because he had his fist clenched, and he was and I said, Chuck, come on, you're the best. You're the best. He said, no, there's not enough room. I said, well, Chuck, I'm ready. He said, no, we're not going to do it. Well, I come in the next morning at, I think, 7 a.m. was our call. And the stunt coordinator came over to me and said, so do you want to wear a belt today? I said, a belt? I have a belt on. He said, no, I mean for your stomach. So what are you talking about? He said, wait a minute, you didn't hear? I said, hear what? He said, oh, Chuck came running over to us last night. He said, Dennis O'Neil wants to mix it up with me. I said, wait a minute. I don't want to mix it up with Chuck Norris. I want it to be choreographed. And so he started laughing, and so we did it. And there were a couple of times that we choreographed it, but it was kind of like Chuck Norris was doing this fight scene with a baby. And I said, I came from Brooklyn. I mean, I had gang fights and everything. We have to make this real. So I didn't tell Chuck what I was going to do. So there was one time I wasn't supposed to do this, but I came around with a roundhouse left, and he didn't know I was going to do it. As soon as I did it, he blocked it, and I did it pretty fast. He blocked it, and then he clocked me again. He got me up against the door jamb, and he pushed me, and I said, Chuck, really, push me, man, like you want to hurt me. He said, no, I don't want to hurt you. I said, please, Chuck, do it. So he did it, and I came toward him, and he threw a kick to my groin. Didn't hurt at all. And then he clocked me again, and I was supposed to be knocked out in the chair. Well, after he clocked me, I fell to the chair, but I got up again. And he looked at me, and bam, he clocked me again. And then I was knocked out. So when it was over, he said, what were you doing, man? I said, I was testing the best, meaning him. And Trevette, the guy who played his partner, he came running from the back, and he said, hey, man, are you all right? I said, Clarence, because that was his name. I said, Clarence, I fought the best of them. Of course I'm all right. So that was, for me, it was funny.
No, absolutely. And also, for viewers real fast, you were in Plain Sight, Law and Order, and you were on one of my favorite shows, Rescue Me.
Oh, yes, with Dennis Leary. Well, actually, Marissa Tomei was on the day I was on. I played a police captain. And that was really interesting because Dennis Leary is really a good actor. And, of course, Marissa Tomei, Academy Award winner. She was just great. They were all great to work with. The cast and crew were just terrific. And that was one of the highlights in my life.
No, absolutely. And now, with the last 12 minutes, I'm going to pass it over to you. But with the poster behind you, and I know you would like to promote this, what can you tell us about Bail Out?
Okay, so Bail Out is about a New York City detective who has a run-in with the mob. The mob wants to whack him. So he comes to Fort Worth to take over his uncle's failing bail bonds business, and he wanted to get away from the mob and the rat race of New York. So the mob follows him because they were going to do away with him. And instead of whacking him, they end up liking him. So they don't kill him, but they end up working for him as bounty hunters. So it's a comedy. And this last episode is called I Am Lorenzo Lamas. And Lorenzo Lamas, he was, his claim to fame was Falcon Crest back in the 70s, I think the 70s or 80s. And then the 90s, he did a TV show called Renegade for 5 years. And so I did a movie with him a few years ago. And he said, I hope we work together again because it was great working with you. And so I told him about my show Bailout. And I told him the concept. He said, I'm in. How do I do it? I said, I'll send you a plane ticket. I'll send you the script. And you'll do it. And he said, okay, I just don't want to play myself. Then I told him the concept. Out of work actor comes to my character, Jimmy O'Neal, and he wants to be a bounty hunter in between gigs. And the funny part of it is that I don't recognize him. Nobody else recognizes him except the perpetrators and the skips. They recognize him, but nobody else does. So it's called I Am Lorenzo Lamas because he's trying to convince me throughout the show that he was a big TV movie star.
No, it's absolutely amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Now, for our fans and viewers out there, and especially for the words of wisdom that you would give for anyone who has disabilities and learning disabilities, how can they work with you and how can they follow in your footsteps?
Okay, so I don't look at disabilities as a disability to work with me. If you've got the talent, I don't care what you're going through. I watch a lot of wounded warriors and people like that. We were watching something yesterday where these wounded warriors took on this feat, and it was some kind of a marathon. I forgot what you call those, where you do 9 things. You have to do swimming, biking, and all these other things. Well, they were all veterans, all veterans. One guy literally had no legs, and he was climbing that hillish mountain with his fists, with his hands, and he was going up it. And when I saw that, I said, you see people like this, and then you complain about what you can't do, and you have 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 feet. I mean, you have a full body. You have nothing to complain about. So I don't look at disabilities as a disability or detriment to working with me. All you have to do is have the talent. So I say, send me your information. If you have a reel, an actor's reel with your work on it, it's much better because I can see what you do. But
oh, absolutely.
Don't give up. Yeah, don't give up.
Well, I want to put you on the hot spot, but for the last question I want to ask you, when I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what made you say yes? How do you feel now, and would you recommend it for other people?
Well, I would absolutely recommend it. First of all, the reason I said yes is because I never want to turn anyone down if I don't have to. If I'm pressured into something, that's another story, but I wasn't pressured into anything. One of the things I think that pushed me forward, although I think I would have done it anyway, but it pushed me forward because you told me about the disabilities that you have. And I thought, well, here's a perfect opportunity to be a part of helping somebody succeed and fulfill a dream that they want to fulfill. I would definitely recommend it because you're so kind and I found it during this half hour, you're so easy to work with and you were reacting to my stories. Whereas if you were just sitting there doing this and doing that, no, I would not recommend it. But he's very attentive and I'm not going to say pushy or aggressive, but he does move like a train, and you don't stop a train. So I didn't want to stop this train.
No, absolutely. And the one thing I do want to clarify is people are like, Well, why you want me on the show? I don't have a disability. It's just the fact that you're taking the time to be on the show. You're supporting people with disabilities. And if anyone with disabilities wants to do what we're doing, you're creating a community of supporters. Yes, of course, I have people with disabilities on the show who are wrestlers and actors, but I'm showing you look at what I can do. I'm on the spectrum of being retarded because I read and learn at a fifth grade to high school level. I'm not qualified to do anything you probably do, but I learn at a slower pace, and I'm showing you, hey, if he can do 961 episodes with TV actors and wrestlers with a disability, I think that's a great success story.
It is. It is. And that's why I applaud people who do have disabilities who keep moving forward. And, if I could be so bold as to say this, it embarrasses the people that don't have disabilities, and rightfully so. So we should be embarrassed once we say, no, I can't do this. Then we look at somebody with a disability doing what we always wanted to do. Then we say, why aren't I doing it? So, and look, in school, I couldn't read. I had a hard time. I had to take a special class to learn how to read. I was not good in school at all. I failed at everything. I really don't know how I got through school until I finally came to my senses. And I did have a spiritual awakening, an epiphany, if you will. And then I started to see a lot clearer. And I thought, no, I'm not going to allow my past to dictate my future. And, that's just what you did. You said, I'm not allowing my past to dictate my future. And I'm always attracted to people like that anyway.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny, not haha funny, but it's funny because you said you didn't know how to get through high school. And I'm like, well, I can relate to that because I was pushed along through high school. I don't have a GED or a wink normal diploma. I have something called an IEP, and for people who want to know what an IEP is, it's an individual educational program, and what that means is you can pretty much wipe your ass with it. I mean, you can. It's uncensored, by the way, but it's true. If you want to work on a car or a refrigerator or go to a trade, and then there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely, working on a car and go to a trade school. But to sum up my 4 years, it's like, oh, you here today? Here's the newspaper. Go sit over there. Don't bother me. So I can relate to you. I have a hard time reading, and I have ADD, ADHD. But I think you're more qualified than I am. But at the same time, people would say, well, he can do things that you can't. That's why you have to work at your own pace.
Yes.
Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, totally agree. Yeah. Yeah. I have somebody in my class right now who's working a lot slower than the other actors, but I don't pick him out. I treat him like everyone else, but yet I'm very aware of his circumstances. So I push a little less, but again, I treat him like everyone else, so he doesn't feel like I'm feeling sorry for him, because I don't. I don't feel sorry for people. I don't think, especially handicapped people, I don't feel sorry for them because they have so much strength, they have so much stamina, and there's so much more to them. And I never count anyone out. I remember somebody saying to me, oh, this guy that studies with you, he's a bad actor. And, he's not the greatest actor, but I took exception to that. I really didn't like it because you never count anyone out.
And you're absolutely right. Now, I do have a couple questions for you off the air, so stay tuned. But for our viewers, if you're watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, I keep saying Instagram, but I'm still working on getting that. But if you're watching on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and YouTube, of course, make sure to like and subscribe. I love talking to you. You will definitely be back on the talk show once again. But for our viewers, thank you for watching and supporting the Keith Andrew Network. Until we meet again, catch you later. Thank you, and have a good night.